Kiddushin 73b. He is not subject to the halachot of a foundling. If the baby's lineage were unfit, his parents would not have gone to the trouble of circumcising him. Likewise, if his limbs are adjusted, indicating that he was cared for after birth, he is not subject to the halachot of a foundling. Similarly, if he was anointed with oil, or if his eyes were smeared with eye salve, or if he was adorned with rings, or if a note, pitka, was hanging on him, or if an amulet was hanging on him, he is not subject to the halachot of a foundling. Concerning a child found hanging from a palm tree, if he was in such a place that an animal could reach him, he is subject to the halachot of a foundling. If not, if he was placed on a palm tree in a way that he could not be reached by an animal, he is not subject to the halachot of a foundling, since he was cared for enough to be placed in a safe location. Similarly, if the child was placed in a thicket near a town where people are not commonly found, he is subject to the halachot of a foundling. But if not, he is not subject to the halachot of a foundling. If the child was discovered in a synagogue near a town, and people are commonly found there, he is not subject to the halachot of a foundling, since the parents wanted to give him to others. But if not, if the synagogue was not near a town, or if it was not frequented by people, he is subject to the halachot of a foundling. A Maimar said, with regard to this cistern into which date pits are placed, pe'ira desufit le, an animal as animal fodder, if a child is found there, he is subject to the halachot of a foundling. If he was found in the middle of a fast-flowing river with boats passing by, he is not subject to the halachot of a foundling. If he was placed at the side of the river, he is subject to the halachot of a foundling. If he was found at the sides of a public domain, which is not frequented by many people, he is not subject to the halachot of a foundling. But if the child was discovered in the public domain itself, where he might easily be trampled, he is subject to the halachot of a foundling. Rava said, and in famine years, he is not subject to the halachot of a foundling. The Gemara asks, with regard to this statement of Rava, to which specific case is it referring? If we say it is referring to the case where the child was left in the public domain because it is a famine year, would a mother kill him by placing him in a place where he is likely to be trampled? Rather, Rava's statement is referring to the case where the child was found at the sides of a public domain. Why specifically mention famine years? Even when it is not famine years, the child was placed in a safe location where he was likely to be found. Rather, it must be that when Rava's halacha was stated, it was stated with regard to that which Rav Yehuda says, that Rabbi Abba says, that Rabbi Yehuda bar Zavdi says, that Rav says. As long as the abandoned child is still in the marketplace, his father and mother are deemed credible with regard to him when they later claim the child is theirs. But once the child has been collected from the marketplace, they are no longer deemed credible with regard to him. The Gemara asks, what is the reason for this? Rava said, since the child has already been publicized with the name of being flawed lineage as a foundling, they cannot change the status of the child. And it is with regard to this halacha that Rava says, and in famine years, although the child has been collected from the marketplace, his father and mother are deemed credible with regard to him, as it is common, even for parents of unflawed lineage, to abandon their children in famine years, and it is likely that they are speaking the truth. Rav Chizda says, there are 3 cases where people are deemed credible if they immediately offer testimony with regard to a matter about which they are not ordinarily deemed credible to testify. These are they: a foundling, a midwife, and one who exempts her friends from uncertain impurity. How so? The case of a foundling is that which we said that his parents can testify with regard to his lineage before he is collected from the marketplace. The case of a midwife is, as it is taught in a brisa, a midwife is deemed credible to say, that this child emerged first from the womb, and that child emerged second from the womb. Her testimony is relied upon to determine which of them is the firstborn. In what case is this statement said? When she has not left the birthing room and returned. But if she left the birthing room and returned, she is not deemed credible, since the babies might not have been exchanged in the meantime. Rabbi Eliezer says if she has stood in her place, she is deemed credible, but if not, she is not deemed credible. The Gemara asks, what is the difference between them? The Gemara answers, the difference between them is, in a case when the midwife turned her head aside after the birth. According to Rabbi Eliezer, she is no longer deemed credible, despite having remained in the room. What is the case of one who exempts her friends? As we learned in a Mishnah, Nida 60b, if there were 3 women who were sleeping in one bed, and blood was found beneath one of them, they are all deemed impure, as menstruating women, as it is not known from which of them the blood came. If one of them examined herself and was found to be impure, in other words, she saw that she was menstruating, she is impure, and all the rest are pure. With regard to this, Rav Chizda said, this applies provided that she examined herself within the period of time needed for the onset of menstruation, in other words, immediately after the discovery of the blood. But if she did so even a short while later, her discovery is not accepted as proof with regard to the source of the blood. The sages taught, if several women gave birth at the same time, the midwife is deemed credible to say, this baby is a priest, and that baby is a Levite, this baby is a Gibeonite, and that baby is a Mamzer. In other words, she is deemed credible to say which baby was born to which mother. In what case is this statement said? When no objection was registered about it. But if an objection was registered about it, she is not deemed credible. The Gemara clarifies, an objection of what type? If we say it is an objection of one witness claiming that her testimony is not accurate, but doesn't Rabbi Yochanan say there is no objection with less than 2 witnesses? Rather, the Brisa must refer to the objection of 2 witnesses, but she is deemed credible when contradicted by a single witness. And if you wish, say, actually, I could say to you that she is not deemed credible even when contradicted by the objection of 1 witness. And when Rabbi Yochanan said that there is no objection with less than 2 witnesses, that statement applies only in a case where there is a presumption of validity, which can be countered only by the objection of 2 witnesses. But in a case where there is no presumption of validity, such as in this case, when the baby was just born, 1 witness is also deemed credible to object. Similarly, if the owner of an item being purchased is confronted by 2 people, each claiming to have purchased the item, he is deemed credible to say, I sold to this one, and I did not sell to that one. In what case is this statement said? When the item being purchased is still in the seller's possession. But if the item being purchased is not in his possession, he is not deemed credible any more than a single witness is.